Hello my makeup loving friends, welcome back to my channel. Great video for you guys today. This is one of my favorite videos of the year. We are ranking the eyeshadow palettes that I have tried out in the year 2021 so far. I saw some at the March Do This video, I think it was last summer or the summer before, and I love the idea of doing these. You guys know I have a problem with eyeshadow palettes, so it can be very overwhelming to wait to the end of the year and then try to rank or go through what my favorite palettes are. I think it's good to have like an evaluation halfway through the year to see which palettes are truly the best of the best. So we're going to do that today. There's a lot of them. I didn't even count them up. In fact, I looked at the stack and decided I didn't really want to count these up. Save myself just a little bit of shame. So we're just going to go through, rank them from least favorite to my very favorite of the bunch. I will tell you guys right now, there are some new releases in this bunch. There are some older palettes that I didn't try out until this year. Good mix of drugstore and high-end. And I will even tell you now, the ones that are ranked pretty low, I still like most all of these palettes. So there wasn't a complete dud in the bunch. So let's just get that out of the way as to not hurt anyone's feelings. Before we jump into the video, I want to send a special welcome to any new visitors here. I hope that you enjoy this video. If you do, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. Also, make sure that you are subscribed before you leave, and most importantly, make sure that notification bell is turned on so you don't miss out when I upload a new video. And with that, let's get to it. Alright guys, we're starting with round one. Let's just call this round one. This is basically bin number one, I know. So coming in at the very bottom is a palette that I think is quite good. I just didn't like it as much as the other palettes from this brand that I tried out this year. And I am talking about the BH Cosmetics Chillin' in Chicago palette. This is a great formula. I love the BH Cosmetics formula, especially inside these travel palettes. I believe I have now 5 or 6 of these palettes, and I've been very impressed with the formulas in all of them. This is just not the most exciting color story for me. If you love warm neutrals, which I do like warm neutrals, but I have a whole lot of warm neutral eyeshadow palettes in my collection, so I think that's the biggest reason that I just have not gotten a lot of use out of this. I don't really feel super inspired to pull this one out. This is the one I have used the least of the travel palettes that I've tried out from BH Cosmetics. I do think the formulas are great. I love their mattes. I love their shimmers. Very easy to use. They work well with any brush, high-end or low. The shimmers work great with a brush or with a finger. All around a good palette, just not a color story that I've been very excited about. Next in line, I had to go with the Alter Ego Blooms palette. Now this is another palette that I think is a good one. I love the Alter Ego eyeshadows. I'm a big fan of Alter Ego, but this palette in particular came out this year as a dupe for the Natasha Denona Love palette. I do own that original palette. It's my least favorite of the smaller or mid-sized Natasha Denona palettes, and this is a dupe for that one. I think it is a great dupe, and perhaps if you are someone that's been looking for a dupe for the Natasha Denona Love palette, this is a really good dupe for it. I'm just not really into bold pinks and purples, and that's pretty much all you get in this palette is a lot of bold pinks and purples. I don't love this color story, and also if I'm gonna reach for these colors, I'll probably just reach for the original Natasha Denona Love, which I do have in my collection already, so this is just one that I haven't got a lot of use out of, which is why it's coming in towards the bottom. The next one up from that is the Juvia's Place Masquerade palette. This palette has been around for a very long time, but I personally just picked this one up on sale about a month ago, so I haven't had this one too long. This is one of the palettes that I kind of could put an asterisk next to, and that I haven't tried it out quite enough to where I feel like I can properly place this one, but that's the reason I had to place it a little bit lower, is partly because I just don't quite know this palette or haven't become super familiar with it, but I have enjoyed using some of the colorful shades. I've used the bronzes in here. I think they're great. I just have a lot of palettes, and the ones that I have coming up before it, I think I just like and have used a little bit more. And that would include this next palette, which is coming in a little bit higher. This is the Nabla Poison Garden palette. This is the black one. I did get this on sale in the most recent Ulta 21 Days of Beauty. I was very excited to pick up a couple more palettes from Nabla. I ended up getting 4 palettes in that sale. I got 2 of the larger ones and then 2 of the smaller ones. We'll kind of go over those ones a little bit later. I like this palette a lot, but as much as I do like this palette, I think you get some great staple neutrals in here. You get a good mix of kind of warm tones and also neutral tones. You get some berry tones, which I always love. You get some good staple darks and some good staple lid shades. So on the surface, I feel like this is a palette I should reach for a lot more than I have, but I just haven't been reaching for it very much. And I've even had it out on my desk a few times, but for whatever reason, I've just been more inspired to reach for some other palettes that I've been enjoying. I would recommend it. I love the Nabla formula, love their mattes, their shimmers are beautiful, and there's a definite possibility that this one could creep up in the rankings, but for now, because I haven't used it a whole lot and I just haven't felt compelled to pull for it, despite the fact that it's been in a couple Shop My Stash piles, I had to rank it a little bit lower. And that also holds true for the next palette. This one is also from Nabla, the Nabla Secret palette. This one I suspect I could learn to enjoy a little bit more. This is another example of, I feel like these just kind of got lost in the shuffle. I just had too many eyeshadow palettes to try out around this time period. I think I picked these up in March and April, a lot of good sales. I just was kind of inundated with eyeshadow palettes. And this one, again, I just have not reached for a ton. This is a fun one. I suspect this one will creep up in the rankings as I try it a little bit more. But for now, I just have not used it as much as I hoped that I would. Next up, I have the Samantha March and Ofra Life's a Draft palette. I just recently got this one and tried it out, so I still feel like I'm kind of getting to know this palette, but I have officially now used every shade inside here. I really do like it. I think the Ofra formula is really nice. I love these 3 shades on the cheeks. So this blush right here, it is so pretty on the cheeks. It's absolutely stunning. I really do love it. I love the highlight that Samantha chose. This bronzer is really nice and warm and beautiful. And the shadows are really good quality as well. I don't reach for these purple tones as much as, well, she probably does. I know Samantha loves her purples. I like my purples, but they're not a color that I wear on a regular basis. So that's the biggest reason this one's coming in a little bit more at the bottom. If you like these types of colors, I think you will love this palette. The quality is fantastic. I think it's actually pretty affordable. This was, I think, $38, but I really do like this one. Quality is great. I would recommend it. It just had some really tough competition, and I feel like those ones I know a little bit better. So next up, I have one that I have similar feelings to as the Samantha March palette, and it is the Dominique Cosmetics Berries and Cream palette. The formula of these shadows are spectacular. I think the mattes especially, these might be some of the best mattes I have ever tried. They are truly the type of mattes that just blend themselves. The pinks and purples in here are really beautiful, but again, I just don't reach for pinks and purples super often. But I am super impressed with her formula. The biggest reason this one's coming in towards the bottom or in my bottom batch is just because of the color story. Next up is a little palette from Juvia's Place. I have the Nudes palette by Juvia's Place. This is a pretty little soft palette. I do really like the color story of this one. Surprisingly, a couple of the shimmers in this one, I think it was it these 2 right here? Actually, no, it was just this one right here in the corner. It feels a little sheer and kind of hard pans a little bit. I've actually encountered a lot of shadows that do this type of a thing. It reminds me a little bit of what I found with some of the Huda Beauty Haze Obsessions palettes. It's just very firmly pressed and kind of hard to get really good payoff out of it, but I do love the shade of it. It is really beautiful and sparkly. Maybe it's meant to be more of a lid topper, but overall I do like this palette a lot. You get some beautiful shades inside here. It is a good one, but of all these small palettes that I've tried out this year, and I've tried out a lot of these, this was my least favorite of the bunch. Coming up next is one that I actually like quite a bit more than that one. It is the Juvia's Place The Chocolates palette. I almost hesitate to rank this one as low as I am ranking it. The biggest reason is because this one is basically only deep shades. One of the things I love most about Juvia's Place is, or are, their deep shades. I love Juvia's Place deep matte browns. They are extremely rich. I mean, you get intensity with their deep browns, which I always love. I love a good intense brown on the outer corner used as liner, and you get 3 of them inside this palette. They are beautiful. You like a smoky chocolatey eye, or if you have a medium to deep skin tone especially, this palette you will love. It is so stunning. I actually like combining this palette with some of the other mini palettes that have the brighter shimmers in them. Great formulas. I didn't have any issues with the shimmers inside this palette. You get more of a taupe brown and then more of a warm kind of deep bronzy red toned brown. Beautiful shadows. The reason it's coming in a little bit lower is just because it doesn't have the range that some of the other palettes that I love have. Next up, I have another staple bronze palette. This is the Canyon palette by Alter Ego. This is a great dupe for the Natasha Denona bronze palette. I love this palette and the original Natasha Denona bronze. The only issue I've had with them, I know I've said this a lot. If you've watched a lot of my videos, you'll have heard me say this several times before. You don't get anything but mid-tones and a couple of deep tones in here. So your range from light to dark is not great inside here, but if you like a mid-tone bronze, you have every option in here you could ever want. I do love a good bronze eye, especially in the summertime. The formulas in here are great. I think they are so similar to the Natasha Denona formula, and we're talking a huge price difference. The original Natasha Denona bronze palette is $65. This one is $16, I believe. Their packaging is really nice. They are cardboard packaged, but these are luxurious cardboard packaging. They have a really nice mirror, a nice weighty feel, beautiful cover art. I love this palette so much. Even though it's coming in towards the bottom in the bottom batch, it is a great palette. Moving up the line, I have the Smin in Switzerland palette. This is such a great one. I almost hate to rank it down here. We're getting to the point where every one of these palettes I could now say I almost hate to rank it here, but I have to put them somewhere, and there are palettes that I like a little bit more than this one. It is a beautiful one. I love the variety variety inside this palette. This has the variety that like the Born to Run palette had. You get so many good options in here, from light to dark, different colors that are also not too colorful, very wearable, but give you a little bit of like creative pizzazz. I do really love this one. I think it's a good one. It's just not one I've reached for a ton, and partly because I have some other colorful palettes that I like just a little bit more than this one, but I do think it's really, really nice. Next up is also from BH Cosmetics, and it is the Hangin' in Hawaii palette. This palette I like a little bit better than I liked the Chillin' in Chicago palette. I think they're somewhat similar. They both have a lot of warm neutrals in them. Here's how they look side by side. Actually, looking at them side by side, they look like they're identical. Trust me, they're not quite identical. This one is just a little bit different. I do like the pinks in here a little bit better. I think they're a little bit more strong without being too bright. I like the bronzes in here, and I do like the lid shimmers you get in here a little bit better. You still get some great staples in here. You get some peaches, you get some light pinks, some deep browns. Great little palette. Not the most exciting or colorful palette in the world, but if you like your neutrals, I do think you'd like that one. Moving on up the line, this is my next batch of palettes, my next little bin. This one's a little bit smaller. But next in line is the Taupes palette by Juvia's Place. I really, really like this palette. It has really good cool tone neutrals in here. If you were not able to get your hands on the Natasha Denona Glam palette or the That's Taupe palette by ColourPop, this is a good alternative for both of those. Very easy to wear. I've really fallen in love with cool tones in the last like 9 months. I've started collecting them more and more and wearing them more and more. I think it was really the release of that Glam palette that did it for me. I really love the shimmers in this palette. I didn't have any issues with any of them. Let me just give them a quick little swatch for you guys. Look how beautiful those shimmery taupes are. It's still not overly dark. If you like something rich and dark and smoky, this probably is not going to give you that unless you have extremely fair skin, but I love the mid-tone cool tones. I think they're just so pretty and easy to wear, and this is a great little palette. And next up is another mini Juvia's Place palette. This is my favorite of the bunch that I've tried so far. This is the Vanessa palette by Juvia's Place. This one is so, so beautiful. This shade right here is the most interesting duo or trichrome. It's really, really interesting. It's kind of a gold that has a strong pink shift, and then sometimes even has like a brown shift in different lights. It is so pretty when you put this on your eyes. It has a lot of dimension to it. This shade right here is a good classic kind of warm taupe color. Really, really beautiful shade if you're into a good purpley lid shimmer, which I am. And then you get some great staple mattes in here. Nice rich deep brown. I love this berry tone right here. A fun pop of orange, which I absolutely love. And then a good neutral transition shade. This is a really fun palette that I feel like for only having 6 shades gives you a lot of variety, and I loved the formula of every single shade inside here. Moving up the line, next I have a very cute palette from ColourPop. This is the Ménage à Moi palette. This is relatively new to me. I haven't had it for a super long time. I think I've had it for about a month and a half, but I have been reaching for it quite a bit over the course of that month and a half. It is a beautiful little palette. I'm very picky when it comes to my pinks and purples. This is the type of pinkish purple that I love. I love something a little bit more cool tone. I love deep berry tones, and I especially love shell pinks and shimmery champagne toned pinks on my eyelids, and this palette gives you several options when it comes to all of those things. You do get some glitters in here, so be aware there are 2 pressed glitters in this palette, but both of these 2 pressed glitters I actually don't mind using. I mean, I don't use them regularly, but if I really want to go for something glitzy and fancy, they are very pretty. They're not very chunky. They're very small particled pressed glitters, which if I'm going to use a glitter, I want the particles to be relatively small. Very fun one, very pretty, beautiful packaging, and even though it is a little bit newer, I know this is a palette that I will enjoy for a long time to come. Next in line, we have the Editorial palette from Marc Jacobs. Now, I first off just want to mention the packaging of Marc Jacobs eyeshadow palettes is pretty darn fancy and spectacular. I mean, this just feels very high-end just holding it, but full price these things can be pretty darn pricey. I did get this one on sale. I want to say I got it for about 30 to 50% off. I was actually really impressed with the quality of these eyeshadows. The shimmers they do include in this palette are not very intensely reflective shimmers. They're a little bit more moderately shimmery. They're a little bit more smoothing. They're not super impactful. Generally speaking, I like my shimmers to be very impactful, even if it's going to emphasize some of the lines on my eyelids, because I just love a good shimmery metallic looking eyelid. You don't get that with these, but that said, they are very beautiful. The mattes in here were incredibly easy to blend. Some of the easiest mattes that I've ever worked with. And I'm sure if you guys have been following me for a while, you'll know how much I love green toned eyeshadows that aren't obviously green, like a Kelly green. And that's what you get with this palette. I don't know that I would repurchase this if I bought it at full price, because I just am not sure that a palette of this size warrants a $50 to $60 price tag. But I do think it warrants a $25 to $30 price tag, which is about what I paid for this. And I am happy to have have it. It's been one that has impressed me. And the next palette I have has grown on me even more over the course of the last few months. I am talking about the BH Cosmetics Avocado Toast palette. I mentioned this palette in a recent video I did on my top eyeshadow picks for summer. This is the palette that I am also wearing on my eyes once again today. It's actually the same eye look. I filmed these videos on the same day. But oh my goodness, you guys, this palette has impressed me so much. It is a very fun color story. If you are into greens, there are so many different green tones in here. You get some teal or blue tone greens. You have a lot of khaki greens, which you guys know I love a good army or khaki green. You get a lime green. This is so much fun. Look at that shade right there. I'm actually wearing this shade kind of underneath the darker shade that you're seeing on the outer corner, which is this one right here. And it gives such a pretty pop of just like bright green that's not overly bright. Really a fun palette. I love the pink and peach tones you get inside here as well. You get a staple shell pink, which you guys know I love, and I love this shimmery gold that has a hint of green to it. That's what I'm wearing on the inner part of my eyes today. Probably not one for those that are only into their neutrals, but this is the perfect palette for those that don't mind playing with color, but like to do it in more of like a muted way. This is a really fun palette, and one that I am falling more and more in love with the more I use it. Next up is another palette from BH Cosmetics. This one kind of shocked me that this is coming in the highest ranked of the palettes that I tried from BH Cosmetics earlier in the year. It is the Blueberry Muffin palette from BH Cosmetics. Now, I first want to admit that I have yet to use these bold purple matte shades on my eyes, but that said, I still rank this palette so high for two reasons. Number one being the beautiful rich outer corner shade you get inside here. You get this brown right here that has almost a purple undertone to it. Do you guys see that? It is so subtle but so stunning. It is absolutely beautiful. You get a warmer toned brown. The number one thing I love about this palette are the lid shades. I will sometimes reach into this palette just for these spectacular lid shades that are inside here. You guys know how much I love a bright shimmery inner corner, and this gives you so many good options for that, but they're all a little bit different. You get a nice bright silver right here that has this beautiful sparkly reflect to it. I love that you get a classic shell pink right here. This one does have a little bit of like a glitter sparkle in it, but it's not chunky. It's just so beautiful and brightening, and it goes with everything else inside the palette. And then you get a couple of other options. This one has a little bit of gold in it. This one is more of like almost a light champagne bronze, and then this is just kind of a silvery champagne, a good mix of kind of warm and cool at the same time. So much fun. I love this palette so very much. And that is coming from someone that is often quite intimidated by blue eyeshadows. At some point, I am determined to give the blues in here a good try, but even without them, this is still such a great palette and one that I love reaching for. Next in line, I have the ridiculously expensive Pat McGrath Mothership 6 palette. This palette is ridiculously expensive. I got mine for around $88, which I still think is so pricey. The most I've ever spent on an eyeshadow palette, but I've often heard from you guys, there are a lot of Pat McGrath fans out there that highly recommended her eyeshadow formula, so I wanted to try it out, you know, for science. So I took the plunge and did it, and despite the fact that I'm still kind of intimidated by this palette, I have used it several times and been totally thrilled with the eye looks that I've created with it. I still don't think I would say run out and spend $88 on this unless you just have really fancy taste. Maybe you have a gift card and you want to buy something really fancy. Normally I value saving money over I do even quality, so I will say that this is really high quality. The shadows themselves are fantastic quality. I think the mattes are really nice, blendable, they last really well. The shimmers are spectacular, especially this one right here, you guys. I mean, this is like unlike anything else I've seen, although there's something kind of close that we'll get to in just a minute here that's much more affordable, but it is a beautiful shade. This is a beautiful palette. The packaging is unlike anything I have ever felt in my life, but even still, a much larger, more frugal part of me cringes a little bit every time I open this up, despite the fact that I recognize the quality of these shades and I can appreciate them. It is just so pricey, and that's probably the reason why, even though this is coming in pretty high, it probably would come in a lot higher if it wasn't so darned expensive. Next in line, I have a ColourPop palette, and this is one that kind of took me by surprise. It's the Off Melrose palette. This palette I thought I might be interested in when it came out, and then I thought maybe no, it might be a little bit too dull and boring for me, and I probably have those shades within my collection. Then I went ahead and picked it up during one of their sales more recently, and I've been surprised at how much I've enjoyed this palette and how much I've been reaching for it. There's some really pretty shades in here that are somewhat unique, which I think that's saying something from ColourPop, because we all know that ColourPop has done the same shade over and over again at least a few times, right? Love you, ColourPop, but you release a lot of eyeshadow palettes. But I can't deny this is a good staple palette. If you like one palette that's going to give you a little bit of variety, and you like your neutrals, but you like neutrals that have like a little twist, I love that you get a duochrome inside here. It has almost a little bit of blue in it, but it's blue in the way that I think anyone could wear this type of a shade. It's a very subtle shift of blue. You get a nice gold inside here. You get a nice taupe inside here, which I love. You even get a rose gold. I mean, great neutrals in here that aren't too similar to each other. A lot of beautiful neutral looks can come out of this palette, and for those of you that like your glitters, you do get one pressed glitter in here, which I feel like is just enough. I can handle one pressed glitter, and that is one thing I've noticed with the pressed glitters from ColourPop. At least most of the ones that I've seen in their palettes lately, the particles have not seemed to be as chunky as some of the first pressed glitters that I tried from them, where they would have the gigantic particles of glitter that looked like craft glitter. I was not a fan of that glitter, but this one seems a lot more refined, which I really, really love. Moving along, I'm going to try and speed things up here. We are down to cream of the crop. These are the palettes that I have been the very most impressed with over the course of the last 6 months. And first up is from Alter Ego. This is the Luster palette. This palette, I was surprised at how much I love this palette. It's one of my favorite palettes from them so far. I mentioned with the Pat McGrath palette with that beautiful sparkly champagne, this has that same, almost the same shade and almost the identical formula. This shade right here. Look how pretty this is. In fact, why don't we do a little comparison to see how they compare swatched next to each other. So there's the one from the Alter Ego Luster palette. And by the way, I believe this is supposed to be a dupe for the Pat McGrath Rose Romance. Is that what it's called? I'll put it here on the screen for you guys. The original Rose palette that she came out with, Mothership Rose palette. I clearly don't know my Pat McGrath that well. But here's the Mothership palette. We're going to compare it to this shade right here, which is by far my favorite shade inside this palette. This one might be a little bit lighter in tone. This one's more of a true champagne. I do think this one does have maybe a little bit more sparkle, but on the eyes, this one is also very, very impressive, and for a fraction of the price. Now, I don't own the original, so I can't say for certain how closely the formula dupes the original Pat McGrath, but I've been pretty impressed with it. I love the color story. Great shimmers in here. Love that sparkly shade. Great mattes, nice and blendable, and really nice packaging. I mean, nowhere nearly as nice as this, because nothing can come as close to this thing. It weighs like 8 pounds. But for a cardboard packaging situation, I think Alter Ego does the very best job out there with their cardboard packaging of anyone. Next up is a newer palette to me, but one that I knew pretty quickly was going to rank pretty high, and it is the Natasha Denona Zendo palette. I love this palette so much. It is quite colorful, but it's colorful in the way that I like color. It gives me just enough variety, but also just enough staples. And I'm just gonna say it one more time. I know I've said this a lot recently, how much I love this mint green right here. It almost looks white in my very bright lights. It's a very bright, light shade of mint green. It's a matte formula, but it's this beautiful, smooth, creamy formula that looks so pretty on the inner corner. The swatch is not going to do it justice. Every time I put that shade on my eye, I'm just thrilled with it. It looks so pretty. It gives you this like subtle pop of green that's not very obvious. All around, just a really fun palette. I've really been enjoying this one. I do love the Natasha Denona formula. I know her shadows are pretty expensive. This palette is $65, which always makes me cringe just a little bit. I'm sure Mandy from 3 years ago would scoff at me for continuing to buy these high-end eyeshadow palettes, but I do really love them, and this one is one of my favorites. Next up, I have two palettes from Nobla, starting with this one right here. This is the Platinum palette. I love these two palettes so very much, and I wasn't expecting to. I picked these up kind of on a whim because they happened to be on sale when the Secret and the Poison Garden palette were on sale, and I'm so happy that I picked them up because I actually like these two palettes despite the fact that they are much smaller. They only have 6 shadows in each of them. I like them and use them a lot more than I've used the larger palettes, which kind of surprised me. I just have to swatch this silver for you guys. Anytime I have someone over here looking at my makeup, this is one of the palettes I pull off to like make people say ooh and ah. Seriously, look at this swatch. It is absolutely insane. Sorry, my lights are a little bright. Look at how intensely metallic and reflective that is. This is one of the most beautiful lid shades I have in my entire collection. And I love the other shade you get inside here as well. You get a nice, warm, almost camel colored bronze. So beautiful. You get this berry toned bronze. It almost has a bit of purple in it. Such a stunning shade, and then some good staple neutrals in here as well. Fun little palette with a whole lot of variety, and if you are looking for something glitzy and glamorous, this is going to give you a very glamorous eye. And even slightly more than I love that one is this one right here. This is the Nobla Metropolitan palette. Such a fun, beautiful palette. I love this shade right here. This is similar to that silver, but it's more of a mid-tone kind of it's almost like a bronze champagne. It is so pretty on the eyes. This is a shade that I think would look good on any skin tone, whether you have the fairest to fair skin or the deepest, darkest complexion. The sparkle in this and the undertone of this is so, so pretty. I absolutely love it. Love that you get a warm kind of bronze gold shade in here. This white right here is such an interesting kind of iridescent lid topper shade. It almost has like a pinky purple undertone to it. It looks really, really pretty on the eyes, especially on top of like this shade right here or this one right here. Really fun palette. I've had so much fun with this one. These two palettes have really surprised me how much I have fallen in love with these this year. All right, guys, we are down to the very top, and I have a group of palettes ranked it. I'm going to collectively rank them as my #1 palette of the year, and then I'm going to sub-rank them for you guys just to make things more complicated. And if you've been watching me for the last couple months, you probably know very well what I'm talking about. The Wet n Wild Color Icon palettes. These are their newer palettes that they released in the white packaging. These have so seriously impressed me, as you guys probably know because I've done like 4 videos on them. I absolutely love them. The formula of these is fantastic. I've always been a fan of the Wet n Wild eyeshadow formula for the most part, but when I first saw these in my store, I thought they were just their old palettes that they just keep repackaging, but these are a little different with the exception of one that we'll get to in just a sec. So I want to go through the larger ones. I have the 10 pan palettes here, and then I have the 5 pan palettes. I'm going to rank them for you guys in order of my least to most favorite, but I love them all. Probably my least favorite of the bunch, though again, I still love this one, is the Lights Off palette. This is a really fun palette if you're into cool tones and if you're into very, very smoky eyes. You get a lot of dark shades inside here, so if you don't like deep dark shades, I probably would skip over this one. But if you like a little bit of richness and you like a variety in the types of shades that you use as liner or use in your outer corner, this is a really great palette. You get a deep dark forest green, a deep dark chocolate brown, you get a black, you get a silver, like a dark charcoal silver. I think it's a great palette. It's not my most favorite of the bunch, but I do really like it, especially combined with some of the other palettes when I want something rich and dark in the outer corner. Next, I have the Heart and Soul palette. This one is so fun if you're into peaches and pinks. If you're not, skip over this one altogether because that's basically all you get are variations of peach and pink. But peachy toned pinks are the type of pinks that I really like wearing. I love the shimmers in here. Love these deep tones right here. This one's like a berry toned brown, and then you get a true berry. Great formulas. And I don't think I mentioned the price yet, but we've got to mention the price. These are so affordable. I think these are $5.99. I believe they're more like $4.99 if you can find them at Target or Walmart. And then the smaller palettes are $3.99 on Ulta's website, and I believe $2.99 if you can find them at Target or Walmart. Ranked a little higher than that one is this one right here. This is the Nude Awakening palette. Now this is a palette that is a repeat. They have done this palette before. This is basically just repackaged, but I do really love this palette because of the staples that you get inside of it. So here's the older version that they sold, and I did swatch these. I'm not going to do it for you guys because this video is already way too long, but I have swatched these shades, and the only one I found a subtle difference between was this transition shade. This one is just a touch deeper than this one right here, but across the board everything else was nearly identical. So if you already have this one, you probably could skip over this one, but I wanted to rank this one pretty high as one of my favorites because I do think this is one of the best staple neutrals, especially if you like neutrals and you really are not into anything too warm or too cool. This is a palette that I think would work for anyone. But my favorite of the bunch in the 10 pan palettes is this one right here. This is the Call Me Sunshine palette. Great palette if you like bronzes. You get a great variety of bronze tone shimmers inside here that are perfect. Let me just swatch these 3 bronzes right here for you guys. I love that you get like every version of a bronze you could ever dream of. This one's a little bit more like greeny toned. This one has more copper in it. This one's more almost cool tone bronze. Then you get a basic champagne, some basic transition shades, and a nice rich chocolate brown. So many great looks can come out of this palette if you are into warm bronzy eyes, which I am. Now let's go through these 5 pan palettes really quickly. Starting at the bottom, last but definitely not least of the bunch, is the Walking on Eggshells palette. This is one of their OG palettes that has been a long time favorite of mine. It's a good one. It's not very exciting, and it's similar to the one I already have. Not to mention I already have a lot of neutrals in my collection, so not one I've reached for as much, but still one I think is fantastic. Perhaps a little more exciting than that one is this one right here. This is the My Lucky Charm palette. This one I went back and forth. I kind of feel like I should rank this one a little bit higher. In the fall, you had better believe I will be reaching for this palette a lot. I really love it. I love this green right here. I used this in a recent video where I think the first time I tried these palettes in front of you guys, I used this shade along with some of the other shades in the other palettes. Look at that green. I love that you get this like green toned bronze in this one. You get a staple olive green. This one's more of a satin. I actually kind of wish that this shade was a matte, but it's not so shimmery that you can't also use it as a matte or blend it into your outer corner or use it as liner. Beautiful shade. You get a good copper, a good staple transition shade. Really fun one if you're into these kind of fall tones. Next in line, we have the Camouflaunt palette. This one's really nice as well. You do get a pressed glitter inside here. It's a pretty nice glitter. A little bit oily, but I have worn this on my eyes. I didn't find it to move all over the place. I love the other shades inside here. I love this side. You get a nice rose gold, a nice basic transition shade. And then over here, you get a nice taupe, which you guys know I love. Sorry, my hands are a little bit stained. Tried wiping these off, but trying to breeze through this thing. And then a nice deep dark brown. Really fun one. Love that one as well. But my top 3 of the 5-pan palettes would have to be these ones, starting with the Sundays palette. This is a nice orange toned palette. Beautiful gold shades in here. If you guys like a gold that's not overly brassy, these golds are both really, really beautiful. They're actually quite similar. Then next to that one, we have the Petalette palette. This is a beautiful palette. If you are into soft, romantic looking pinks, these are so, so pretty. They're pinks that aren't overly pink. This rose shimmer in the center, I just think is one of the most beautiful lid shades. It has the softest like purple undertone to it that is so, so flattering. It is very, very reflective. Good cool tone matte transition shade here. And then this deep kind of satin toned purple is great for blending into your outer corner. I love the looks that you get out of this palette. But my very favorite of the bunch in the 5-pan palettes is this one right here. I love a good warm toned kind of coppery eye. I love a good gold on my inner lid. I love a little bit of like a duochrome, and you get all of that inside here. This shade right here, this gold, has a subtle, I don't know that I'd call it, yeah, I guess I would call it a duochrome. It's a subtle duochrome, but it has this beautiful shift to it. I mean, it's a gold, but if you turn it to the side, you get this like peachy, warm brown undertone to it that is so, so pretty on the eyelid. I love that you get a staple champagne next to that one. There it is right there. Beautiful. You guys know how much I rely on a shade like that. And then of course you get some great mattes inside here as well. I love that you get one that's like a deep camel color and one that's more of that red tone brown that I love. If you don't mind some warm tones in your life, which I do not, especially in the summertime, this is such a great little palette for $3. I just don't think that you can beat it at the drugstore. Not just for $3, but even just at the drugstore in general. I think these are the best of the best. And that brings us to the end. That is it for all of the palettes I've tried out in 2021 so far ranked. I know this was a little bit overwhelming. Congratulations if you made it this far. And thank you for watching and bearing with me today. I know this was a lot. I'd love to hear now from you guys. What is the best palette that you have tried out this year? Whether it's a new release or something that's older that maybe you purchased in the last 6 months. Leave that for me down in the comments below. But that's all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for stopping by. I hope that you guys enjoyed this one. Please give it a thumbs up if you did. And let me remind you one more time. I hope you'll subscribe before you leave. But that is all for now. I will see you guys in my next video. Bye. I have an epic video for you guys today. Actually, not epic. I don't like the word epic. No, that's not correct. I actually don't mind the word epic. My husband strongly dislikes the word epic for whatever reason, so I avoid using it. A long time coming just by knowing, oh my gosh, I am off.